Hey guys, it's Dr. Tom with EBM Fitness Solutions, and in this video I want to talk to you a little bit about balance. I know it's kind of a boring, non-sexy topic, I get it. However, there's some really important information you can take from this that if you're younger may not apply to you, but if you know somebody, whether it's a family member or just a friend who is maybe a little older and is experiencing some of these issues, it might have some relevance and might have some importance to that person. And it might also make sense for you, again, whether it's a personal thing or just somebody that you know. So many times when I was at the hospital treating patients, one of the additional diagnoses they would have would be poor balance, loss of balance, something like that. And when they would come in, as part of the evaluation, I would look at their balance. We'd do a quick screen. It wasn't an overly intense sort of screen, but it gave me enough information to let me know that balance was not the primary issue. And I'll explain more in a second. But you see, when I was in school, I did a vestibular physical therapy clinical rotation. And what that focused on was true balance disorders, right? So that's vertigo, different types of vertigo, and other issues that were true balance. And again, a lot of neurological things. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I stumble from time to time, and sometimes I lose my balance. Like, no, these were extreme cases, and it was true balance disorders. So what I'm talking about is not that. Now, is it possible you have a little bit of that plus what I'm going to talk about? It's definitely possible, but these things are different. And when I explain what is the common problem, I think you'll see that the two things are actually not related really much at all. Don't be alarmed. My shirt's a different color, but we're still talking about balance here. And one thing I wanted to clarify is the difference between the balance issues that we're going to talk about, maybe some of the more complex vertigo or vestibular type issues. Those come with a host of other symptoms, typically. They can be dizziness, actual loss of balance where you fall down. They can make you dizzy. You may actually throw up or feel like you want to throw up. And it can be triggered by a lot of different things. Maybe rolling in bed, bending down to put shoes or tie your shoes, and you sit up. You feel like you're spinning or the room is spinning. Sometimes you might be tracking something with your eyes. Say you're walking to the grocery store with your head turned and you're scanning items on the shelf. That can trigger sort of a response. Those are completely different, and that's not what I'm referring to in this video. Those are a separate balance issue. Those are vestibular issues. Those need to be treated separately. The good news, though, if you do suffer from those, go get checked out. There is a whole subset of physical therapy, vestibular physical therapy. They can treat that stuff. Go get looked at. Don't suffer with it. But that's not what this is. Just want to clarify that point, that what we're talking about is something where during exercise or different things like that, you feel incredibly unsteady, where you just feel like you're all over the place like this, you can't maintain your balance. Those are the things that I'm referring to now, not the other things. So we have three main balance systems or balance centers in our body, or parts of the body that work together to help us balance ourselves. The first one is our vision. And a lot of people become over-reliant on their vision as they get older, but vision is a big one. As I've mentioned, the inner ear, that vestibular system, that's a big part of your balance as well. And then the third one is sensory input from your feet and your ankles. Now this one can be problematic if you have injuries, if you have any kind of, say, a neuropathy where you have decreased sensation in your feet. This is a big concern with diabetes, and if somebody is kind of progressing through that process, this is a concern for them. But those three systems need to work together to keep us balanced. And ideally, they would all work in a nice balanced system. The problem is, usually not until we're a little bit older, that the sensations from the feet, the lower body, are diminished. Sometimes they're not there at all, but they're diminished. And then because of a more sedentary lifestyle, the vestibular system isn't challenged enough, so therefore it functions at a lower level. So then the person becomes incredibly dependent on their vision. This is part of the reason why you see many older individuals stare at their feet when they walk. They don't know what their feet are doing without that visual kind of confirmation as to what's going on. Now this leads to a whole host of other things that I'll talk about in a little bit, But when you see that, that has been building over a long time for that person. But the reason you see that is, and they don't necessarily do it consciously, but they don't trust that input, so they're looking to see what the heck is going on down there. As I mentioned previously, a lot of my patients would come in with a co-diagnosis of some kind of loss of balance or something pertaining to balance. And I would always run them through a quick screen to test the balance, kind of more those vestibular issues I referred to before. Because I wanted to screen those out and make sure that it's not that, because if it was, I was going to need to call upon one of my coworkers who did specialize more with vestibular rehab and kind of bring them in to kind of facilitate recovery for the person. But in most cases, that cleared out. That was not the problem. So the bigger issue, and this is the issue that shows up for most people, even at younger ages, is that it's weakness in the hip and the glute area. Primarily what's called the gluteus medius. It's a smaller glute muscle kind of on the side of your butt here. And when it's strong and functioning well, it stabilizes the hip. And this happens anytime you're in a single leg stance. So walking, running, stair climbing, certain exercises, anytime you have all of your weight on one leg, this muscle needs to contract. If it doesn't, what you'll find is the hip kind of kicks out this way. Now my hip levels change, my knee collapses in, and you get that loss of balance, or whoa, I'm really unsteady kind of a feeling. Most times for most people, that's the issue. That's what we're looking at, is the inability to stabilize properly. This also will show up if you're exercising and doing single leg movements, right? So what you'll typically see, if you're doing a lunge, and if you watch yourself in the mirror, you may see this. The knee collapses in towards the other leg. That's primarily because the hip is not stabilizing properly. If it does, you can get here and you're good. But if you're getting this, now everything is off. All your balance will feel off. And this will show up, if it shows up there, it's going to show up in many other areas. Like I said, stair climbing. You may notice it a bit when you walk. And with walking, here's the tricky thing about that. When we take steps, we create an actual side-to-side force that our bodies overcome. And in general, for most of us, we don't even feel it, we don't even recognize it. It's not a big deal. I mentioned before that older individuals will tend to look at their feet. They also tend to shuffle their feet. And this is part of the reason why. They are so weak through the hip and the glute area that they cannot stabilize this side-to-side motion when they walk. So they stare at their feet and they shuffle so that they decrease their stride and their feet never really come off the ground, so they minimize this side-to-side force. So again, they don't know they're doing this, but this is why those people are doing it. As you build up strength in the hip and the glute area, you can then retrain their walking mechanics, and that person can start to have a normal walking pattern again. But it starts with strength. What I would find with my patients is that after we cleared the balance from the vestibular type stuff, the weakness in the hips and the glutes was so incredible. They had no strength, and wouldn't test single leg balance, but I would have them on a table, and we would test strength through here and have them do different things, and it was virtually non-existent. So that was our primary focus, was get them stronger through the hips and through the glutes, and then they would start to notice on their own that they felt more stable. Their balance was better. Even though we didn't treat balance directly, they noticed improvements by us working on the actual problem, which was more of a weakness issue.